Hey, what's up? My name's Cameron and this is Design Based, a new channel where I'm going to be posting all sorts of design content. So we're going to start off today with a rebrand, but in the future, hopefully things like collaborations, education, and just more insight into my process and how I do design. If you've never heard of me, I'm a 22-year-old graphic designer and recently just graduated with my degree in graphic design. For today's video, we're going to be looking at doing a rebrand, so I started off by looking around my room at what needed one. And a few logos stood out, which were Logitech, Corsair, and NVIDIA. Now, since the time of my products, these logos have been updated for both Logitech and Corsair. So as much as the Logitech logo used to be one of the worst things, they have a really good logo now. So that leaves NVIDIA, and I think they're a great target for a rebrand just because they have a pretty good logo, a super solid brand, but they're just a little stuck in the past, and I think the fact they haven't updated their logo since 2006 is kind of a main reason for this. So I think it's something worth looking at, and let's dive into our analysis. So let's start by looking at what NVIDIA actually is and what their history is like. So they're a tech company that started in 1993. Since then, they've become quite popular, and they're most known for their graphics cards. But lately, they've done a lot of cool, innovative things like RTX, their ray tracing, as well as RTX voice, and some of the earlier examples of the game streaming that's becoming popular now. So because of this, I think it is quite important that they get a little more of an innovative rebrand, because what they have since 2006 is just a little too in the past still. Looking at their name and their purpose, the word NVIDIA means envy as well as the eye, so that's kind of where their logo came from historically. Similarly, that's where this italicized N came from that you can see they brought into their new one. That being said, their official brand name, according to their guidelines, is NVIDIA in all caps, so it's not something they need to have anymore. Looking at how this lives within their ecosystem, we learn a couple things. One, seeing their logo in the top left here, we can see that is quite small, and it actually gets kind of convoluted. You can't quite make it out in these sizes, so it does need a bit more simplification and just a little more of a modern digital feel so it can be used everywhere they want it to. Otherwise, we do see a lot of green on this homepage here, so that's a big part of their brand and something we're going to keep. Looking at some of their advertising and promotional video, we learn a couple cool things that I never considered, one of which is the importance of the square in their branding. So we see it's a small element in their logo, but pulled across to the rest of their branding, this is a big thing they use, be it in the corners here or built out into these cubes here. And this is an interesting dilemma for me doing the rebrand because before looking at this, I would have gladly cut the square out. I don't really like how it acts. But seeing this, it does need to be considered and either replaced or kind of fit with the new system that I developed. Looking at some more of their ads, these are a little more of the NVIDIA feel that I've come to know and love, and I think more of the direction where I'm going to pull this rebrand. So we can see it's quite VR dominant with the like sci-fi futuristic rendered wireframes that we see a lot. Looking at their GeForce GTX logo here, we can see that this is more of a modern take they have on it, and it's quite sharp and a lot closer to the feel that I think they need. So we're going to take some inspiration from there. But otherwise, yeah, I think just a modern update that really fits with this feel of the top two is definitely going to help them prosper. So looking at their actual logo, what I like and dislike, there's a couple things that stand out. Like I said earlier, one of the main things I don't quite love is this square here. There's a couple reasons for that, one being just because no matter what, it never quite feels balanced, even if it optically is. Also, I do not like how this cutout side works, and there's a few reasons for that. One, just personally, it's not something I really like in design. Maybe in 2006 it was good, but now I really don't think it has a purpose. Also, it can get quite annoying using it, because these corners technically never actually touch. So printing it on something like a sticker or a sign can be an issue. Similarly, depending on the size, with ink, it can well up and not be perfect. Obviously, this has worked fine for NVIDIA for 27 years, but it's something that I think I'm going to change just because I don't love it, and I'm the one doing the rebrand. Looking at their eye mark, I think this is their strongest part of the logo, but it does have some issues that need to be addressed, and mostly I think that it looks a little dated. Why is that? I think mostly because it's organic in the feel. There's the varied line widths, and it feels almost hand-drawn, kind of early Photoshop or Corel Paint. And that is really not what we're going for with this modern, innovative brand. So I think keeping this shape similar but really just modernizing it and sharpening it might really be all they need. Other than that, looking at the word mark, I do quite like it, and I think this is their strongest element right now, so I will bring that forward largely similarly. People will complain about the lowercase n, and people don't like having the small caps and the caps and everything the same size. Personally, I do quite like it, and especially in the case of this mark, I think the lowercase n really helps kind of youngen and liven the feel as opposed to if it was just a normal n. So maybe we might bring some more of this curved element across into the rest of the brand, but otherwise I think I have some good ideas, so it's time to start sketching. Alright, so now that the sketches are completed, I'll just take you through kind of my thought process and how we got there. I like to start out by kind of thinking of different ways that they could be combined, or how the mark can look conceptually. So one idea was a big offset, just as a way of kind of dividing the two sides like they already have. Otherwise, keeping their square but containing it to the square instead of letting it go past might be a good move. I also like the idea of concentric circles, almost like the bullseye approach, as well as the spiral that they have now. That's something that's really strong, so definitely something that I could use as well. Going forward, I try all sorts of ideas, so some work well, some are their old logo, and some are a shitty Pokemon Go knockoff, but otherwise, what do I like and what did I find was working? The ones I underlined are my favorite ones, so things like this, which are essentially just building off their normal one. This kind of takes place of the same form in multiple ways. Maybe expanding that one step further just so it's a little more unique and has some more lines and more energy to it, so I think that's a really cool approach to take. And then maybe how does that get pulled across more? So combining it into things like these two over here, I think are quite solid options. This one gets a little chaotic, maybe a little G Fuel, so maybe keeping it just a little more contained, just like a normal eye shape might be the move. Coming down to the bottom, I did explore the idea of this offset approach here, which is maybe a different way to resolve the split they already have. Unfortunately, in testing it, and especially digitally, this offset isn't really enough. So it gets convoluted at small sizes and pretty much just reintroduces the problem we're trying to solve in a different form. So unfortunately that idea is cool, but probably not gonna work. So in the end, I gravitated towards pretty much just a bit of an update on their normal spiral. And as much as this isn't too revolutionary, I think it is what they need. Rebrands are not often meant to be revolutionary. Just by updating it a little bit and addressing what isn't working in the modern landscape, we can really just perfect it, keep it clean, but also have the same feel that it's always had. And that's great. So now I'm going to go forward and almost digitize these, kind of do part 2 of sketching on Illustrator. I'm not actually going to scan in or perfect any one of these sketches. I'm going to just experiment a little more with some curves, maybe ways that this could be rendered, and just see what sticks there. We're going to aim towards this bottom left concept here and maybe take a bit more inspiration from some of the other ones that are underlined. So I'll pick that back up there. So what you're seeing now is kind of a mix of a speed art of how the final mark came to be, but also a bit of my process and experimentation. You'll notice off the bat it is quite messy, and especially right here what you're seeing, a whole lot of anchor points and overlapping stuff that doesn't quite work, but ultimately I know this is a fine way of doing it, and in the end I can clean everything up. Because of the nice curves it has, I can also use the Simplify Path tool, and that's something that doesn't usually work well, but in a case like this it's going to work great. So I did a couple different approaches, one using the hand-drawn style, one with a more perfect geometric style, and in the end kind of a mix of the two, but just a little more of the kind of variable width, and the path just adjusted so that works out. But other than that, I went into doing the word mark, and you'll see it's largely just recreating what they have now, because like I said, that is one of the main things I like about their brand. So just a matter of kind of recreating it, giving it a bit more of a consistent style, and maybe addressing a bit more of the changes I would like to make. In the end here, you'll see that mostly I'm focusing on just kind of how that A can work, as I think it should look a little more like the N. Even after I stopped recording, I actually touched it up some more, so after this you'll see my final logo presentation and how I decided to take it. But otherwise, I'll leave you with some music for the rest of this. Alright, so here we are. This is the mark I have created for NVIDIA, and pretty much what I'd create if they approached me and said, hey, we're looking for a modern update to our mark, really keeping the brand the same, but just giving it a little more of that modern feel since we haven't touched it in a while. So what I did was really just focusing on narrowing it down to what the essence of their brand is, and from a visual standpoint, this has been their curved eye forever, and as much as maybe a rebrand could change this, it is really what NVIDIA has had forever, and I think it's super important to keep the same. You'll see a lot of updates to it though. It's a lot more kind of fluid, clean, and modern with the sharp edges, and that's really where NVIDIA needed to go from their mark. In terms of addressing the type, I kept it quite similar, but you will see I brought that curve in a little more, so there's actually a lowercase a at the end of the word now, and this kind of just youngins it, makes it feel a little more professional but approachable. I think that's really just a little shove that they needed. You'll see obviously this logo works well in any usage, so you might use it in the 2-color, that would be the standard logo. You also might have it 1 color knocked out. This is pretty much what they have with their logo now. I've slightly updated their green just to be a little more vibrant, but essentially it's the same NVIDIA green that we all know and love. So going forward into some application, how might it look when they're using it? How might it look in a system? So here it is mocked up on a CPU. Now I don't think NVIDIA actually makes CPUs, but this does give kind of the vibe of how they might show it in the technological kind of inside a computer sense with their chips. Also bringing a bit more of that green across just so it does scream NVIDIA. And then going into a full-fledged advertisement, what I did here was take the RTX 2060 off their site, but give it more of a green kind of wireframey treatment that I talked about earlier that I think is really successful and kind of what they're pushing lately. Just throwing the logo in the bottom left, you'll see it works really well with the brand and just feels nice sitting there, so I'm really happy with how that turned out. But ultimately, this is just a small update. It looks like an ad you'd see from NVIDIA now, but just with a couple touches that really make it live on and feel modern, just like I think they need. So this is the solution I would pitch for that. Alright, so there we have it. That was my NVIDIA rebrand video. This is a brand new channel, so I am gonna shell extra hard. Please make sure you like and subscribe if you did like the video. I'll be posting all sorts of design content, probably around weekly. So please let me know what you did like about this video, what you might want to see differently next time, or just any general ideas you have. I'm also looking for some collaborations, so if you're interested, please do hit me up. Other than that, make sure you have an awesome day and go design something great.